Servus Männer, it's Red Pill Germany again. On this wonderful Sunday, I'd like to have a closer look at some activist fails from Germany. And I'm, of course, referring today to the fake protesters of the last generation, or die letzte Generation, as they are called in Germany. Maybe in your country they go by a different name, but all these groups are very well connected. And it's these people who enter art galleries and then spill canned soup on old masterpieces. And also, they glue themselves to the roads in order to cause traffic jams and other things. Some of them are quite funny, and some of things are really not. We all have heard about the severe and dangerous situations that these people have created when, for example, rescue vehicles, firefighters, also ambulances cannot make it to where they are needed because of an artificially created traffic jam. There was an incident like that in Berlin, and the politicians just said, hey, well, there is a traffic jam in Berlin all the time anyway, so why even bother? But now there has been a case, and they are really getting more extreme, where they cut a fence to the Berlin-Brandenburg airport, and they entered the runway of that airport. Several flights needed to be rerouted, or they had to wait and take a couple of rounds above the airport. So you see, these things are not really funny, and they create potentially very dangerous situations. But today I want to focus a little more on the funny cases. And I have noticed that our mainstream media in Germany, at least, they really don't focus on these funny cases because they have an agenda too, and the last thing they want to do is to make fun of them, because that is, of course, the most potent weapon against these fake activists. So I will tell you a little bit about the background of these groups, who funds them, and so on, and then I want to give you some more humorous examples, because I think just laughing about them is the best thing you can do, and that is exactly the reason why our government and our mainstream media are not putting a spotlight on these cases. They want to support them, they want them to be taken seriously, but here we go. So the group known as Die letzte Generation, the last generation in Germany, they are financing themselves also from donations of wealthy individuals, but they also, in an organized fashion, they get money from the Climate Emergency Fund, and that is a tax-exempt lobbying group in the United States, in California, I believe, and the main donors and contributors there are bored brats who are the offspring of, for example, oil magnates. So, and in Germany, we have the same pattern emerging. For example, there is a girl that is related to a guy who made a lot of money with tobacco, and that girl now is very active for the climate. And also in the US, Eileen Getty, for example, the heiress to the Getty fortune, a fortune that was accumulated in the oil industry. And now these girls, and it is mostly girls, well, actually I've never heard of a male heir to such an empire or to such a vast fortune who is now plagued by a guilty conscience that their grandfather or their daddy made that money with tobacco or oil or gas or automobiles or slavery also, which for these people is the same thing. For us on the right, people are not natural resources, but for these people, for these globalists, human beings are just natural resources. So in their minds, it doesn't make a difference if it was slavery or oil that made this fortune. Anyway, they are plagued now by this guilty conscience, and now they want to ameliorate their psychological trauma by paying people to conduct some sort of fake activism worldwide. So the last generation in Germany also gets money from this organization, the Climate Emergency Fund from California. It was even uncovered that this is a side job for these people. So some of them, they cut some hours in their main job, and then for every hour of activism or what have you, they just send a bill to the Climate Emergency Fund, and that is their taxed side income. So they declare it even in their taxes. That is their side job then. It is a freelance work basically, and the bill goes straight to the climate emergency fund. This is according to what the Swiss newspaper Weltwoche has uncovered at least. All right, so now we understand these groups a little better already. We know that it is bored girls who inherited billions of dollars that their parents or grandparents made in the industry, like fossil fuels or cars or tobacco or what have you. And now they are buying other people in order to get in trouble. So you see, the money comes from these spoiled brats, and the people who are actually gluing themselves to paintings or to some Berlin road or something like that, well, they are not billionaires, but they are indoctrinated by our school system, of course. They also have this fear that soon the world will end, and well, maybe they also look at the money and they see that this is a nice side job for them and they don't have any other skills, maybe. Who knows? Anyway, they are bought activists, bought actors, I should say. They are playing a role and they are paid for it. But I won't deny that these people don't genuinely believe in the cause or the danger in which the world is, according to their beliefs only, of course. And some of these poor lost souls are actually getting in trouble with the law now in Germany for their performance art, because they are bothering people and they're creating dangerous situations, as I already explained in the beginning. But now let's look at some of the more humorous actions that this group is responsible for, or that we can thank them for, I should rather say. And there are basically two main events that I want to talk about. The first one was taking place in Wolfsburg, where the headquarters of the Volkswagen Corporation is also. So a group that is very similar to the last generation. It's called Scientist Rebellion. They are just a bunch of students or researchers, and they are also fighting for the same cause. So they went to some showroom where there were like really nice cars, and they glued themselves to the floor of said showroom, and they stayed there for over 40 hours. That is quite a accomplishment, I think. And but afterwards they complained that the people who run this showroom, they didn't give them a tent for privacy while they were glued to the floor, and they didn't give them a bowl to, well, do their business into. And the most hilarious thing, I think, is that they complained that at night they turned off the light and they turned down the heating. So these people are climate activists, and they want a huge showroom to be lit and heated during the night when there are no customers or visitors there. That is quite hilarious, I think. But also, I should say, when you glue yourself to something, you should think a little bit about what that actually does. I mean, when the guy that you want to pressure with this kind of action, when they just shrug their shoulders and, lock the room, turn off the light, and just leave, yeah, then I would say that you didn't plan your little campaign perfectly. There is some room for optimization, let's say. But they are scientists. I'm sure they will figure it out. And the second event that I found rather funny was a more recent event, and I have to explain a little bit. So there were two very attractive activists, and they entered a symphony hall in Hamburg that was built not too long ago, where the German taxpayer provided the elites of the city-state of Hamburg with a very luxurious and very expensive symphony hall. Now, these charming young people were sitting in the first row. Well, first row is not really the best seat, but of course it was the perfect seat, the perfect space to start to do what they were about to do. And their genius plan was, they wanted to glue themselves with this really fast acting glue once again that solidifies in a matter of seconds. They wanted to glue themselves to the banister or handrail that is around the this little elevated spot where the conductor of the orchestra stands. What happened then was quite hilarious, however. You must bear in mind that Hamburg is a very green, very globalist, very leftist city, and especially the elites from Hamburg, they might be filthy rich, but they of course virtue signal all the time to causes like these. But in the official video that the last generation posted on Twitter, you can only hear the first couple of seconds of their action, and at the last seconds there, you already hear that the crowd is booing and they say no and go away, and that is not what they expected. So it turns out that when you inconvenience the elite of Hamburg at their favorite pastime, like showing their evening gown in a symphony hall, well, then they don't like that, even though you claim you're doing something for the environment. So that rather large young lady, she tried to give them a speech about the climate, but you couldn't really hear it on the video because the crowd was booing so loudly. So what they had to do in their little propaganda video, they had to cut there, and they included then a little video that showed that lady reading the speech from a teleprompter or some screen. Also very hilarious that she said she wanted to have children, but the way it is going with the climate right now, she just cannot imagine bringing a child into this world. Yeah, right. And also it means a lot of work and a lot of money, right? But the most hilarious thing was, of course, that they thought that this handrail they had just glued themselves onto was firmly connected to the floor. It turns out that handrail was not connected firmly to the floor, and you could just take it off. It was just put in there. You could easily take it off, and that is what a guy just did. He just took away this banister or handrail with the two clowns glued onto it and let them holding on to the banister himself out of the room. And people were applauding at that point that these two clowns were taken care of and ushered off the stage. The mainstream media did not show this latter part, and I had to get it from the rather conservative newspaper Junge Freiheit. They reported about that, and there is a video that maybe not went viral on Twitter, but that was shown on Twitter, where somebody in the audience filmed the whole thing, and there you can actually see the whole scene, including all the booing and how they are let out then by that guy in black. And I link it down below this article. The first video is the official video that they posted for propaganda purposes, and the real video showing the whole scene where you can clearly see and hear what is going on for longer than the first 10 seconds. That is the second video that is linked in the article that I link also here below. All right, so we have learned a lot about these people, and the reaction from our government and from our mainstream media is also very telling. For example, that they gave propaganda support to these activists in the second case by not really showing and not really talking about the reaction of the crowd at that symphony hall. By the way, I should add that some people claim that The Last Generation is funded directly by the German government, and that was found out by the fact checkers to be not true. But all that they have denied so far is that they directly fund them. Of course, it could be possible that they are funding some kind of NGO, who funds some kind of trust, who funds some kind of club that somehow funds the climate emergency fund or something like that. So it's always the game that they're playing is they're saying we do not directly fund them, but so many NGOs are funded by the government, which makes them GOs, governmental organizations, and they then fund these groups. So of course there is funding going from states or from tax money, but it's not directly going into their pockets, maybe. But who needs tax money when you have these bored billionaire brats who try to virtue signal and who don't want to glue themselves to something, obviously, but who want to pay people to maybe entertain us or entertain them, I don't know, or maybe it's really just to do something against their guilty conscience here. All right, and as I said, some of their actions are quite dangerous or potentially dangerous. Some of them are more humorous, like I showed you right now. And I really wanted to focus on those because, as I said already, that is, in my observation at least, what the establishment, the mainstream media, and our government, what they want to sweep under the rug as hard as possible because, God forbid, you laugh about these clowns. Our establishment wants these people to be taken seriously as activists and as fighters for a cleaner and more just future, what have you. But in truth, it is a form of Ersatzhandlung, in my belief, and I will maybe make another video on that, what I mean by that. So I hope you enjoyed today's talk and take care. Servus, Kameraden.